Okay, so I did mine over the bottled water. Davis. There we go. Okay, so imagine a world where you can't walk outside without like finding green grass and like you always smell garbage. And that's like a likely future for our world if we don't do something about all the water bottle usage that we're having. And in 2004, Americans drank over 24 gallons of bottled water on average. And we've talked about in this class the Texas-sized glob of trash in the Pacific Ocean. And I mean, it hasn't really caused any problems yet, but the more it keeps accumulating, the bigger a problem it's going to be. In reality, our environment, health, and well-being can only be improved by putting our foot down, turning to tap water, and banning the distribution of plastic water bottles. And so if you look in a social setting, you're going to see a lot of plastic water bottles, which is becoming a problem. And people are under the misconception that they're using the water bottles because it's safer, more pure, and better than tap water. And then some argue that bottled water should not be banned and is better than tap. So this is my antithesis. And the IBWA is the International Bottled Water Association, and they make several claims about why bottled water is better. And their first claim is that bottled water is highly regulated, and they say that bottled water must meet the same FDA standards that are set for public drinking water supplies and is also subject to state regulations. And supporters of bottled water, like the IBWA, claim that one reason that consumers choose bottles over tap water is because of the taste. And they say that chlorine is often used to disinfect tap water and can leave an aftertaste unlike bottled water, which is tasteless methods of ozonation and ultraviolet light. And so basically they're saying that since it has to meet the same standards as food, that it's perfectly safe. And then these are the more of their claims, and they claim that like they're going against the claims that people say, like, because people say that bottled water can be labeled as spring water, but it's really not spring water. So they say that the bottled water must be labeled according to the specific government standards, and they say that spring water has to be collected only at the spring or through a borehole tapping the underground formation feeding the spring, and that purified water has to be water that has been produced by distillation, deionization, reverse osmosis, or other suitable processes, and mineral water has to be containing no less than 250 parts per million total dissolved solids. So those are just the standards that they say bottled water has to meet. And then in terms of personal health and environmental health, if bottled water is not available, consumer research shows that more than 1/2 of people would choose soda instead. And bottled water leaves the lightest environmental footprint of all packaged beverages. So those are two other claims made about bottled water. And in this one, she's stating that people drinking bottled water is actually better for our environment because banning it would turn people to soda or other packaged drinks, which are worse for our environment. And bottles are perfectly safe to reuse if cleaned properly, and the plastic does not release any particles into the water that could be anticipated to cause cancer or other serious irreversible chronic health effects. So those are all of the claims that people make supporting bottled water. And bottled water should be banned because of the immensely negative effect the production and waste of bottles have on our environment and economy. And so first off, it's a widespread belief that consumers associate bottled water with social status, which is a pretty shallow reason to be like using bottled water because of all the negative effects. And then the use of bottled water has shot up drastically in the recent years, with it being up 57% from the 98 billion liters consumed 5 years earlier. And then in 1984, Americans consumed an average of 4 gallons of bottled water per person, and by 1991, that number had doubled. And so the amount of plastic that it takes to do like the 4 gallons per person is creating a lot of waste, and that's hurting our environment. And then in more terms of environment and economy, with the increase in popularity of bottled water, increase in waste, and negative effect on our environment has responded respectfully. And bottled water is 10,000 times more environmentally damaging than tap water. And manufacturing bottles, plastic causes air pollution and uses up our fossil fuels. And then roughly 1.5 tons of plastic are expended in the bottling of 89 billion liters of water each year. And then in terms of cost, this year Americans will spend around 9.8 billion on bottled water. And when compared to gasoline ounce for ounce, it costs more. And people make the claim, oh, my picture's in the way, of reduce, reusing, and recycling, but 8 out of 10 plastic bottles end up in the garbage, and then that's 88% of water bottles which are not recycled. And this year, Americans will throw away 30 million water bottles into landfills, and so that causes a lot of problems, which goes against the claim that they say that reduce, reusing, and recycling solves the problem. And then banning plastic bottles would protect personal health also, because in 50% of cases studied, the only difference between tap water and bottled water was that the latter contained added minerals and salts, which does not actually mean that the water is healthier. And even with whatever add-ons like that are made to bottled water, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization concluded that bottled water does not have a greater nutritional value than tap water. And supporters encourage the reduce, reuse, recycle thing again, but that can actually cause health issues because some reports suggest that the plastic can break down and get into the water from the chemicals, or just create a lot of added bacteria from reusing it. And tap water is regulated and tested a whole lot more than bottled water. For example, the New York City tap water was tested 430,600 times during 2004 alone. And the IBWA's own representative said things like that the new regulations put on bottled water would help make it as good as tap water, so even they don't think it's better. And another representative from there said that he will not state that bottled water is healthier. So even the own bottled water people won't admit that it's better, so it's kind of a misconception to believe that it is. And then people are often being played by false advertisement when it comes to what they're actually drinking in water bottles, when in reality tap water is just as good, if not better. And the bottled water industry hides the quality of their water because they don't release their tests to the public. And scientists have concluded that the use of bottled water on the assumption of purity can be misguided. And then oftentimes, bottled water industry puts people under the influence that bottled water is from some really cool spring or some really nice place, like Fiji water, when oftentimes it's just tap water, or could be worse in terms of bacteria. And scientists found that nearly a quarter of the samples of bottled water had significantly higher levels of bacteria than the tap water that they tested. And a group did a study on 10 different brands of water bottles, like Walmart and Sam's and stores like that. And after doing the test on those 10, it was discovered that more than 1/3 of the chemicals in these bottles were not regulated to be in bottled water. And 4 of the brands were also contaminated with bacteria, some of which can be linked to cause health issues such as cancer or reproductive problems. And they also tested the Walmart and the Sam's water, and they found out that it was actually just tap water. And then the label on the Alaska Premium Glacier drinking water claims that it's pure glacier water from the last unpolluted frontier, but they leave out the detail that the water used for this brand is municipal water drawn from the public water system in Judea. So it's actually not from the glaciers. And then in the case of spring water, FDA rules allow companies to actually be using a pumped well, and then they can treat it with chemicals, so it's not actually water straight from a spring like they claim. And then it has been proven that oftentimes bottled water is simply just tap water, and then there's again where it's talking about how the Walmart and Giant store brands had the chemical signature of standard municipal water. And so it was treated with chlorine, which was another big claim that bottled water companies said they didn't do. And then lastly, if our country were to ban bottled water and put our efforts into the money into improving the situations for other different countries, which are just as important, it would cost a further $9.3 billion per year. This is less than a quarter of global annual spending on bottled water. So if we would just put our efforts into making the water better for other countries, we would actually be spending less. And after analyzing all of the information available that shows that bottled water is no healthier, damages our environment, and is often not even what most companies claim it to be on their labels, it should be a clear conclusion that tap water is the option that needs to be chosen. And at the end of the day, the pros for banning bottled water are always going to outweigh the downsides, and is a necessary step for our country, for our future and well-being. And that's